Okay, I think we're live, Peter.
Hello, Red.
Yeah, cool. How cool is that? Hey, Happy New Year to you, Peter.
Happy New Year to you too.
Can we still say that? Is it still allowed on?
You're allowed to say it in January, but we got 4 more days.
Probably a little bit late for it, but never mind anyway. So I think we've got, I think I was just telling you before, I think we've got around sort of 35 to 40 people. This was very last minute, guys. We meant to start advertising this at the beginning of January, and we've just got round to it on the day we're doing it. So for those who are with us, big warm welcome. And this is actually going to be a whole series of events we're doing over the year, which I'll show you in a second, but a warm welcome to you. You should see in polls that there's a poll asking about how long you've been involved in customer success management. So do have a go at that, and I'll end the poll and we'll share it with you in a minute as well. And also just to say that there is a chat window, and you are very welcome to put anything you want in there. Please keep it clean. You're welcome to ask questions. We will actually pick up questions at the end rather than as we go along, but we will pick them up. So you might want to just, whilst you're thinking of it, write a question in there, or hold on until the end when we ask for questions, whichever you prefer. But as you go along, you might want to put observations in anyway and chat to each other. That's absolutely fine. We don't mind doing that. And I wonder if I could ask for a volunteer, please, to just make some notes as we're going along, because we would quite like a third-party perspective as we're talking. We don't want to know in advance what we're going to say. We want to keep this fresh deliberately because we think it's more creative and more interesting that way. But if somebody wouldn't mind just literally just like bullet points of what we talked about, and then sharing that with me afterwards via email or in LinkedIn, and then we can assemble that into just some basic notes to pass to everybody alongside the slides. That would be fantastic. Do I have anyone who'd be prepared to do that? If so, please do say in the chat window, please. And that would be really, really awesome if someone doesn't mind doing that. And if nobody volunteers, that's fine. I'll do it myself afterwards when I review the recording, because we will record it. So if someone can volunteer for that, that would be great.
Catherine just volunteered. Yes.
Oh, Catherine, you're marvelous. Really do appreciate it. Thank you very much. So just to explain, Peter and I've twisted Peter's arm really hard up his back until he agreed finally to do something a little bit more. A little bit more, basically, I suppose, this year, because we enjoyed working together last year. So this year, we're going to do a number of things, but this is a series that we're doing. And this is going to be one per month for all 12 months. And hopefully you can see there what the series is. So the title overall, researching, developing, implementing and managing a modern customer success service. And then that nicely divides into 4 quarters. So the research, the development, the implementation, and finally the managing and improving. And we've got, obviously, per quarter, then we've got 3 events for each quarter. So for the first quarter, we're focusing on the research side of things. And today's event, the January event, is specifically on modern demands and challenges facing customer success. So it's quite a sort of a scene setting one today, I think. So we're going to build on that. So each month, we're almost picking up where we left off and building on the previous month and months as we move forwards to create a sort of a holistic approach to researching, developing, implementing and managing a modern customer success service. That's the idea. We're going to record all of these, and we will provide the recording and the notes afterwards as soon as we can for you all to download. And if others join in later, of course, they can watch the previous recordings to catch up as well. And if you miss any, sort of similar things. So that's the concept. I hope that makes sense. And obviously what we're going to be doing today then is modern demands and challenges facing customer success. And our agenda for today, we've got 5 topics that we want to try and cover in the hour, and a little bit of time left over for questions and answers. So that's going to be the format for today, Q&A at the end. But as I said, feel free to use the chat as you wish anyway. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the poll now, and then we'll just so you can see what the percentages are. So because actually there's a real mix, a whole lot. And with nothing really dominating. Perhaps the 1 to 3 years is the most sort of popular. So between 1 and 5 years encompasses most of us, but we do have some fairly seniors, 5 to 7 years, and even over 7 years as well, which is great. So welcome one and all. Okay, well, enough of me wittering on. Obviously, what we want to do is get on with the content and get Peter involved as well. So here's the first of our topics on our agenda around demands and challenges facing us: the outcomes-driven and rent don't buy movements. So let's just get rid of the slides for a moment and let's talk about that, Peter. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I guess the way I see that, I mean, it's really well structured. I would say outcomes driven and rent to buy. To me, that kind of presents a picture that all businesses are being boxed in. And what I mean by that is that everyone knows that the subscription economy is driving a lot of cloud growth, a lot of SaaS growth, and consequently, customer success growth. But I would say it's not just restricted to cloud-based businesses. And I think it's because, and that's where the outcomes driven kind of notion comes in, is I believe that most businesses in general are now understanding that customers are a lot more savvy. And even if they are kind of bound by license agreements and that sort of thing that aren't as flexible as, say, cloud-based software licenses, I still think they have an expectation now, business leaders, that the vendor is going to provide them with an outcome that they are expressing. And they're willing to kind of really hold vendors more and more accountable for that. And I would say, so I would say this is just the where we are in our evolution of the business world at this point.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, no, I absolutely second what you said. I think it doesn't make the slightest bit of difference in a sense whether you're selling software as a service, something else as a service, or you're not selling a service at all. You're selling a product and they purchase it outright. The point is, people don't buy things in order to have the enjoyment of buying things. Generally speaking, certainly not in the B2B world. They buy it for a reason, and the reason is they want a result out of that purchase. Yeah. So there's that famous expression, isn't there, about people don't buy drills, they buy holes. And actually, I think that only gets halfway there, because actually it's the picture hanging on the wall that people actually want. Right. That's the final outcome, right? That's right. That hole is only half the story, right?
I mean, it is exciting if you're a tools geek to buy a drill, but other than that, most people just want the picture on the wall, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the purpose at the end. And there are some people, and I know plenty of them, the type who've got a shed that's got everything in it that you could possibly, who like to own tools. Well, maybe that is the end result for them. But I think, for hobbyists and stuff, but for most people, they buy a tool to do a job. It's the job that is the interesting thing. Certainly in a B2B world, businesses cannot afford to do anything but that. They cannot afford to have extra tools just for the sake of, don't they look nice, arranged in a nice, neat order next to each other. I'm so glad we've bought every single different possible type of lathe that there is available in the world, because don't they look great? That is not delivering shareholder value. Okay. Yeah. We decided we only wanted these types of lathes and we needed this number of them in order to do the job we need to do to create these chair legs. So it's about the result. It's not about the tool. We're excited about the tool because it's our tool. Customer, not so much.
Yeah. And Rick, you and I have been in business a long time. And I think it's fair to say, generally people are a lot smarter now. And it's not just business leaders. It's actually percolating through organizations. I think if you have conversations with employees at almost any level, people understand kind of the paradigm now that really the customer's more savvy, more intelligent, really is better articulating about what their goals are, and how the vendor can be an actor there to help them.
Actually, it's a great point. They don't necessarily need the same type of help they used to have because they already know a lot. Yeah, not only more intelligent, but I think more knowledgeable as well. Okay, yeah. So they don't need to have certain things explained to them. They've worked that out themselves. Of what they need. It's the detail now they need to perhaps discuss.
The power of it, right? Everyone has access to the internet now, so.
Yeah, the real world advice, right, of the situation. So I think that is also the case. I think when we're looking at outcome conversations, I think that nowadays, and I was talking to a friend of mine who works in sort of the big technology, the sort of systems integration sort of type technology companies. And he was saying, and he consults in that area, and he was saying how he was talking to a reseller who could not understand how they had lost a deal. And I can't remember the details, but it was networking related. And they were saying, but we were just, we know we were the cheapest. We offered them, X numbers of routers, X numbers of bridges, X numbers of firewalls, X numbers of, professional services to implement it and manage it and all the rest of it. And we know we were, no one could have beaten us on price. And we went in and we gave them this amazing deal because we really wanted the deal. And they went with one of our competitors, and we know they were more expensive. And I don't understand why. And the guy said, well, that's because I happen to know your competitors, and I happen to know that they didn't go in selling numbers of these things. They went in consultatively to ask what the challenge was. Yeah. Right. And they talked to the business decision makers, not the technologists, about what the business needed out of a network. And then they promised to deliver that. Yeah. So the fact that the bill was a bit higher was irrelevant to the fact that the ROI was all the things that the business wanted.
Yeah. Someone smarter than, I guess, me and you probably said that, in the last couple of years that, customers have now moved on from, outcomes and all that kind of stuff. Of course, it's really true, but really what they're buying, the product is more than the product. In other words, it's the entire kind of experience and the ability for the vendor to help them meet that goal. So that's what they're buying. It's right. Beyond just the software. So that your example,
so it's a package.
Right? All those routers.
It includes the products and the services and the customer success management and everything else that surrounds it. Absolutely right. It's a package. So let's move on then. So outcomes driven, rent don't buy, gives them more. We didn't really talk about rent don't buy, but effectively that's agility and flexibility is where really the focus here, isn't it? Instead of an outright capital purchase, in which case it's going to take 7 years to get our money back, and we don't really know what our business will be like in 3 years, let alone 7. Instead, let's hire it on a per annum basis, and then we can change it. We can go up, we can go down, we can buy more of it or less of it, we can adapt it, we can get rid of it entirely based upon the fact that the world changes and we know what we're going to need in the future. So just to perhaps bring that in as well.
Yeah, and I would just finally say rent don't buy makes the equation to customer success so hard. So what I mean by that is it's just a straight line. There's no doubt and shouldn't be in anyone's mind that customer success is absolutely.
Yeah, so rent don't buy, both of these equals you must have customer success management because customer success management is how customers end up with the outcomes. That's customer success management equals how come they decide that they're going to retain our product and they're going to renew it.
Yep.
Absolutely right. Okay, good. So let's talk about the second point that we had on our list, which is delivering customer success services to all customers. So again, when we're thinking about our modern customer success service, this is like the next factor that we need to consider in what we're doing. So delivering across all customers actually can be quite tough, I think, can't it?
It is. It's quite a challenge, and it's especially a challenge, a real challenge, and really difficult these days. I think because of the pandemic, and the impact that's had on the entire business world, and kind of at a granular level, your customers are all feeling its effects in different ways. Even if they're in a less hard hit sector, you can't say just because they're in that sector they're doing well. No, you actually don't know. I mean, you have to actually look at all your customers. And what I'm suggesting is that it's risky for your business to still segment with the old model, and treat that particular segment with a lot more attention because they give us a lot more money. You don't know how well they're doing. I mean, if they're not doing that well, they might not be around next year, or they might have to cut back because they're just not sustaining themselves really well during the pandemic. And so it's wiser to actually look at the entire community of your customers and figure out how to be a lot more nimble, I would say, in touching virtually all of them. I mean, it becomes a business risk if you don't look at it that way.
So I think that what you're saying effectively is that yet again, data becomes really important, and
Right.
and making sure that we understand that it's meaningful data, that we are analyzing it accurately and correctly, and that we understand it. So it may be, as you say, that an average may actually be meaningless when applied to a specific. Okay, and that tends to be the case, right? I mean, averages tell us the mean, the median, or the mode. They do not tell us the detail about company X. We need to bear that in mind, right? That's very important.
If you're a gambling person, maybe that's okay. Maybe at the end of the day, it'll be all right.
Yeah, but throw it all on red. That's what I say.
What if you miss out on some real rising star of a customer that there's really not on your radar very much, and so you don't know how well they're doing, and they just get tired of the lack of attention from you. Right.
So I think there's a balance, though, because you could also argue, if we talk about customer segmentation, for a moment, there is also an argument that ultimately it's not necessarily cost effective to treat every customer in all respects uniquely and individually. We have to be pragmatic and group customers in some way. And I think that the classic way of grouping up customers is by revenue. Yeah. Which could be like the customer's revenue, or the revenue as in the deal size, as in the revenue we get from those customers.
Or a combination.
Or it could be by the types of products that they use, or it could be by their industry. And that those tend to be, any thoughts on how one might...
Those are all valid, and we do that, and I think you have to do that. I'm only suggesting that you need to at the very least, I think you need to touch every customer, and then keep an eye on that, and make sure that the ones who are engaging and consuming your content or consuming your product, you just make sure that you're notified that stuff's happening there, even if they're in a lower segment and you're kind of more of a tech touch. Find a way to be notified that this particular customer is actually doing a really good job. Maybe we should direct a little bit more attention to them. What I'm suggesting is have a work at evolving into a more nuanced kind of multi-segmented kind of customer success model. And that's not simple, but I think that's where we need to go in our world, because again, industries in a lot of flux, and the pandemic's here, is still going to be here for a while, quite a while, I think. Yeah, and who knows what's going to happen afterwards, right?
No, indeed.
I think you need to kind of develop these skills.
No, I agree with you. I don't think that you can just say that because someone's in a certain industry, that this must mean that much, to be quite honest with you. And actually, for me, what I believe helps with what you've been talking about, I think that the clever way of segmenting actually is by outcome requirement. So, but the problem with doing it is that means you've got to understand what your customers' outcomes are.
That's right.
And by the way, if you want to know what their outcomes are, you've got to ask them, right? And also help them to answer, potentially sometimes. So why am I saying this? I'm saying this because if we segment by outcome requirement, then that enables us to have a playbook that says, this is what we in customer success need to do to help you to achieve that type of outcome. And then we can apply that playbook to that segment. So it helps us, it focuses us in that segment on the results that they need, as opposed to the results that some other segment need, regardless of whether they're big companies or little companies, or whether they're paying us a lot or paying us a little bit, or which products even they've purchased from us. The important thing from their perspective, everything from their perspective is, well, we bought it because we wanted this end result. So if you share a same or similar end result, it is likely that the customer success service is going to be the same or similar. So I would say that that's the clever way, but it does mean a little bit more upfront work to work with the customer to understand their outcomes.
And do you have kind of a soundbite bit of recommendation for how customers, how the audience can think about doing that at scale, finding out the outcome?
Okay, and I think that's actually is another great point. Is that how do we scale? Because really, the other way of looking at this question of reaching everybody is, well, it tends to be easiest from a financial perspective to pick the low-hanging fruit and to say, well, these are the higher revenue deal sizes. We can afford there's a little bit of space in these where we can afford to deliver a reasonable quality customer success service, which costs money. And then as we move sort of down the revenue values, then this tends to be less and less. But here's the interesting thing is that, my belief is that actually some of our biggest customers actually need us least. And some of our smaller customers, it might be an investment from our perspective, okay? But actually that could really pay off. And that's one of the things I think, coming directly back to what you said, Peter, about how, we've seen like how some companies have responded in COVID-19 to their customers' needs with, we'll drop everything and we'll help you. You're our customer. We value you. We understand things are difficult. We will do our best to help, right? And others who've gone, well, COVID-19, we've got difficulties. Bye. And people remember this, and they will remember the companies that treated them well, during that difficult 6 months in 2020 for the next 5-10 years, I would suggest. Okay. And I think that this is similar here. So we've almost got an opportunity that it may be expensive, right? And there's decisions that need to be made. That is, ideally, actually, you might want to throw more service at some of the lesser value customers, because they're the ones who need the help. They don't have experts in training, or they don't have experts in implementation, or they don't have, the expertise that a larger company can sort of DIY it. And they need more of our knowledge, skills, and experience.
And the downstream benefits to a company for investing, as you call it, in kind of some certain segment of customers who might not be the highest revenue or anything, is that, and this is almost never measured, is the follow-on effects of a successful customer. Meaning, do they provide you with the ability to you can create benchmarks that you can share with customers, and the obvious one, could they become referenceable? I mean, these things are never really factored into the investment.
Which comes down to the CLV, right? The customer lifetime value, which, as you've just said, is not just the revenue value, but also their contribution to marketing that brings in other revenues, or also come to that, their contribution to product development.
Correct.
As well. So, whilst we're mentioning it, and I had one final thought that I wanted to leave on. Of course, it's gone out of my mind now. Your point was so good that I wanted to jump on that and agree with that, and I've forgotten the thing that I wanted to say. Automation. I wanted to say how can so it may be an investment, is what I'm saying. So how can we then justify or afford that investment? Well, maybe we can automate some of the other stuff, and actually not think about, well, it's a high revenue company customer, therefore it's got to be high touch. No. Okay. Actually, they probably would prefer self-service a lot of the time anyway. Give them self-service where self-service is better.
And if you don't believe
that helps to fund the clever stuff.
Yeah, and if you're thinking or you're skeptical that that's the right approach, just ask them. Just ask them questions and say, if we wanted to do this, if we think about doing this with you and provide this sort of automated means for this, you know what? I would say most customers would say, yeah, we would like that because it'll just help our efficiencies. We still want to.
Yeah, and we don't have to wait for you.
We don't mind if it's not.
We can pull it when we want it rather than waiting for you to be available.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. So we talked about delivering customer success to all customers. So point number 3 on our list today: proving the value and return on investment from customer success services. So value and ROI. So let's have a chat about that. And I think that what we had in mind here was value to us, the supplier, and value and ROI to the customer, and both are important, right?
Oh, absolutely critical. And the obvious way most people look at it is we have to provide ROI for the customers because we want them to renew. And so they need to be able to see demonstrable proof that the investment they've made is actually bearing kind of financial fruit for them through.
Can I just interrupt you 1 second? Because I just want to just absolutely repeat exactly what you said, but in different words, right? The renewal is a byproduct of customer success.
Right.
So we don't go around doing renewals, right? We get renewals because we go around doing customer
part of the
success.
process, right?
So sorry, please carry on.
No, that's fine. I think that's when people think of ROI, they think of and this is the right way to look at it, because it's kind of a service mentality, is we want to provide a great service so that customers receive ROI from the investment and they make a good decision for us to renew the subscription and maybe even grow it. Would be wonderful. But the other way to look at it is, are we getting ROI from the investment we're making in customer success?
Yes.
And to do that, you have to follow the same logic, which is, are they renewing? But also, I think you have to kind of think about what are the other opportunities that having a customer success kind of an instrument in place to drive successful customers, what can it do for you? And you touched on it a little earlier, Rick, on the previous question, was around product. I've always felt that was still a really final frontier for customer success, where we're really not doing a great job of really programmatically connecting the customer community's success or even failures or struggles back to the product, and have it kind of more in a more process-driven way, iterate the product in a bigger way. And I think that would be a way to measure one aspect of measuring ROI for the vendor.
Well, I would agree with you with that, and and of course we're talking about medium to long term. So it's the tactical stuff is,
yes,
generally speaking, what's front of mind. So customer X, did they renew? Okay, right. As opposed to, in 3 years' time, are we still alive as a company? Because do we still have relevant products? Okay. Yes. Now, from a tactical perspective, from a short-term perspective, it's more important that the customer renews. From a medium to long-term perspective, it's much more important that we've still got relevant products to sell.
Well, one's a board level metric, one isn't. The board level metric is the renewal, right? So,
right.
That's got to be.
What I also think is interesting is that a renewal is a lagging indicator.
Correct.
It tells you what you did right, not what you are doing right.
That's right.
Okay. A leading indicator is where the customer is getting its value. So the stuff that is customer facing is how quickly have we got them to the point when they are now using our product? How quickly were they able to get to that point? And how efficient was that? What was the cost involved in training and process rearrangement and managing all of that? And how much loss of productivity did they have? If we can reduce the loss of productivity and reduce the time taken to get back to full productivity with our product in place, then actually that has saved them a heck of a lot. Okay, that in itself is you're off, right? The starter pistol's gone off, and you're out the gate first. Okay, so you're already in the lead in this race, but you've still got the rest of the race to run, and the rest of the race is actually much longer, and that, of course, is all about the value realization over time, and that is what CSMs should be focusing a lot of their time and effort on. Is not just the out the gate bit, which is very, very important, and making sure it's as short a time period and as effective and productive as possible, but also then in the long term, over the period of months, years, decades even, that the customer's using our products and services, that we are constantly making sure, is it still useful, is it still relevant, are there requirements changed, are there third party requirements like a new law, have our products changed, are they making use of the new features and functions? This is a constant, I said a battle, it's not exactly like that, but you know what I mean. It's a constant duty of care to that customer to make sure that they're continuing to get the benefit out of it. And by the way, you cannot do renewals when it's time for renewal.
No.
Okay. You do it by proving the outputs all the way through the term, however long the term is, so that by the end of the term, there isn't a discussion about it because you've already had it.
Yeah, we call it the renewal should be a non-event, right? It should just be really kind of friction-free, kind of just a transaction because
there's no surprises at that point.
Yeah. And one more thing about ROI, since I head up enablement, I always have to think about, as I'm designing a program, what's the effect on productivity, productivity on our CSMs when we put in place a new program and have to pull them out of the field for some period of time to train them on something and get them certified and all that kind of stuff. And what does that mean in terms of impact to the customers? We try to strike a balance that it's important that the CSMs gain the knowledge to conduct themselves in alignment with the model we believe will benefit the customers and us. But at the same time, we don't want to take too much away because that impacts the customers. And so we have to kind of strike a balance there. And what that means for us is that we have to kind of calculate our investment in CSMs around training and whether it kind of impacts the ability to drive the success plans and the achievement of milestones, and what that might do in terms of its effect on customer satisfaction and that sort of stuff. We're not that sophisticated yet, but it's the way we're thinking about it. So
that's really interesting. Yeah. Okay. And I'm thinking about companies that I've been involved with, consulting and coaching and training, and I'm thinking that some of the times, companies can be guilty of measuring activity rather than results.
Yeah.
So, for example, the best CS team is not the one who had the most meetings.
Right.
and I'm not making this up, by the way. I was involved with a CS team who were measured by the number of meetings that they'd had.
Wow.
Okay, that was actually one of the primary ways and they were actually tasked with having more. Okay, so here's the thing about tasking your team with having more meetings is they'll go and have more meetings.
Sure.
Well done. So, do you really think that in tasking them to have more meetings that they're going to, get better results for the customer? I'm thinking actually they're probably going to annoy the customer more. Because what they're going to do, right, to hit their target, they've got to annoy their customer with pointless meetings. Yeah. I mean, you'd set yourself up for failure, in my opinion. Okay, in my opinion, maybe I'm wrong, but that's how I see it, right? So actually, rather than measuring them on that, if they'd instead measured them on the level of which the customer expresses that they now understand and can control how the product delivers outputs to them, for example. That's the stage that they're at. Yeah. That is something that is far more valuable. And if we can increase outputs, and often the customer doesn't know how to measure outputs, right? I think that's really important to say. We've got to help them to understand, and just to explain what I mean by an output. Okay, an output is what is the result of performing a task in the customer's business. So, effectively, a business is just a series of tasks that people do, there's people involved. They follow a process and they use tools. Right? We provide the tools, they work out the process, and they provide the people. And there's an input, which is the raw stuff coming in. They do the activity. They follow the process and use the tool, and they end up with an output. And if you collect all the outputs together, you get the outcome eventually.
That's right.
That's how it all fits together. Just to explain what I meant by that. So therefore, outputs over time is progress towards outcomes. So what we can do is we can give ourselves a roadmap towards outcome attainment, which has a set of mini targets, milestones en route, and to say, well, we've got to have this amount of outputs, by Q4, or this amount of outputs by Q8, and this amount of outputs by end of year 3. Okay, and in doing so, we're going to hit our 12% reduction in costs and 5% increase in quality in our manufacturing within 4 years. Okay, because we've got these milestones that we're checking along. There's no point waiting until 4 years' time and so did we hit the outcome? It's too late. You can't change anything, but you can look at the outputs all the way. Yeah, and those tell you what to do.
And otherwise, it could be looked at. I totally agree with you. Well, you could restate it a little bit and say that you mentioned earlier about leading indicators is that the achievement of these milestones along all these tasks are happening in progression or in parallel, whatever. But at certain points, there's certain specific milestones that you and the customer both have agreed are markers. And those markers can actually be synonymous with these are the leading indicators, because we've agreed as both parties that this is progress, this marks progress. And if you start looking at it more holistically and say, okay, these are leading indicators to a successful renewal in the year.
So, for example, if an output requires a certain form to be used on your tool, then a leading indicator is the form is now being used.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's increasing in its usage. Yeah. That's a leading indicator. It doesn't tell you that you've got the outcome because you haven't yet, but it is a leading indicator that indicates that. Whereas something like an NPS score Now, an NPS, that's
right.
a lagging indicator. That says, and 3 years later, the customer recognizes how important all of this was and says, we love you.
It's an indicator of something that's already happened.
Correct.
And it's fine, but that's not something you should be relying on to say our business is healthy, right?
Okay, so proving the value in the ROI from customer success services. Let's move on. So we've got 2 more topics, and then obviously we'll do Q&A as well. So topic number 4, Peter, increasing the productivity and efficiency of the CS team. So this is the next thing that we're going to need to be thinking about when we're creating our modern customer success services, increasing the productivity and efficiency. So let's have a little think about that one, because there's lots of things I think that we could say about this. And obviously from my point of view, running a training certification as CPD company, I'm going to point out that number 1 on my list is, well, have you actually ascertained what your knowledge, skills, and experience requirements are?
That's right.
Have you ascertained what your knowledge, skills, and experience of your team actually is? And have you done a gap analysis to see what the difference is? And if you have, what are you doing about it to bridge that gap? And I would suggest that number 1 on bridging the gap, funnily enough, is going to be training. Not the only thing, by many means, of course, because it may be, well, we've got a systems and processes gap. Maybe we've got a collaboration between teams gap. But quite obviously, training is going to be up there. Any general thoughts from yourself, Peter?
Well, my general thoughts are, you start in terms of productivity and efficiency. The leadership team needs to be clear about what their expectations are for the organization. Once that's established and it's clear to everybody,
so what are we trying to achieve?
Then you just, as you just described, understand the organization's capabilities down to the individual's levels, because then you can have good conversations and be really clear with everyone on communications about, here's the required capabilities, and if there's gaps, we'll address them accordingly. And that should help a lot in terms of these big items around productivity and efficiency. But if you have that kind of squishy, wishy-washy kind of notion around that, you haven't established that kind of clear kind of mission and what the expectations are and how people fit in, then you're really going to struggle around the productivity piece, because you're going to have such wild fluctuations of skills and capabilities of the people. And the overall customer experience will be so inconsistent. And there'll be some people who kind of waste a lot of time and are struggling, and other people will be super efficient, but you can't really replicate that if you don't really have systems in place to do that, I think.
I think there are a number of sort of aspects. I think everyone sort of recognizes generally that customer success management is quite a complex role. There's lots of bits to it, more so perhaps than the average role, we could say, maybe.
I think it is.
We could argue that, I think. And I think as such, it's quite nice to sort of separate them out a little bit. So the way I think of it, and see what you think, Peter, and you may think of it very differently to this. I guess this is only one way of thinking about it, but I look at what I describe as domains of expertise. And I think about the first domain of expertise being your product. So you've got to understand what it is you're selling, not necessarily from a technical perspective like a product specialist might, but more from a business perspective, like the customer needs to understand it.
Yeah.
So you need to know what the customer needs to know. And obviously you need to know more, because you don't know what questions the customer's going to ask. So you need to be the super customer in a way, rather than the power user, you're the power customer.
That's
you
right.
remember the old power user expressions that used to get used. So I think we're the power customer of the product. We're always looking at it from the perspective of, so how would that generate more value? So we need to know the functions, but the functions not from the how they work perspective, but from the what they do.
What use cases can it solve? Not necessarily down to the features and functions, but you really want to have a good kind of grasp of the solution.
The art of the possible with products. What can it do for you? So that's number one. That's the first domain of expertise, and the second domain of expertise is what I describe as industry expertise. And this is not our industry I'm talking about; it's customers. So this is context. So now we've got our product, but it's our product in the context of your company, Mr. or Mrs. Customer, and we understand that as well. Because contextually, we now understand what types of challenges they're likely to be having. We understand the language they're using, what their targets are likely to be, how they're remunerated and rewarded, what their competitors are up to, what they're going to struggle to be able to do. What efficiencies are likely to be able to be made and what are not, and why. It's the context that makes customers roll their eyes and go, oh, let me explain from scratch, because you obviously don't know if you don't know it.
You don't know our challenges. You don't know that we're up against a regulatory regime we can't do much about. We have to within that.
Yeah. Or a union regime or a culture regime or
right. Yeah. I think that's where the value is for a customer. If my CSM has that kind of awareness of not just my goals, which I've already articulated, but the environment within our company plays, that's huge. I think that's really
right.
That'd be very
and this may be that, I mean, it may be that we as a company, whoever we are, maybe we sell one product to one industry. Okay, in which case, of course, it's fairly easy, right? So the domain of the product domain of expertise is just product X, and the customer domain of industry is just industry A. All right. So, okay, that's fine. We can hire people who know this product or train them in that product, and we can hire people who know this industry or train them in this industry. But of course, that is often not the case. So if we take your company as the exact reverse of that, a company like Oracle, well, of course, you're going to be operating with, a huge portfolio of multiple products and services that cover a wide range of features and functions, and every possible industry known to person.
Yeah.
So in that instance, what you've got to hire for is something slightly. You've got to decide, right? Are we hiring for flexible people who can do it all, or are we actually going to say, well, we need a team where we've got a specialist in this area, in that area, and in the other area? And I think certainly for Oracle, obviously that's going to have to be the case, right? And the somewhere in between, the medium-sized business that has a somewhat complex portfolio of products and a somewhat complex portfolio of different customers is going to need to, at some stage, when they're moving from 6 to 10 CSMs to sort of 20 to 30 CSMs, at somewhere in there, there's going to need to be, right, now we need to bring in someone who knows who's from the industry of the customer.
I think that's the right.
They're from the industry of the customer, and they represent that customer to us, as it were.
Yeah. I think when you said 30 to 40, I think that's the right amount of CSMs to really start thinking about kind of that layering of expertise and more focus.
I would say certainly by then, if not before, I'd go 20, 30, but 30, 40 from you, I get where you're coming from. So then you've got those two domains of expertise. I think the third domain of expertise is customer success best practice. Mm-hmm. So if you want to be productive and efficient at something, well, you follow best practice, and you don't reinvent it every time. You do it the same time again, and you get better at it. And by the way, everybody in the company does it the same way, so we all get better at it. And so we're all being managed and measured the same way. And this is where my company's practical CSM framework comes in, and very strong belief in frameworks and in process. So the third domain, we've got the domain of our product, we've got the domain of the customer's industry, and we've now got the domain of customer success best practice. And that is, well, what do customer success managers do? Well, you have an engagement, and the engagement starts with you researching the customer, and then it moves to onboarding the customer, and then you help them get through adoption, and then you're into the value realization piece. Okay. Yeah. And within that, you then divide that into, well, here are the steps that need to be done at each of these important stages. And you break it down again and say, well, then here are the actual activities that you need to do. And then you say, well, then here are the tools that you need. So it's all broken down, and it's simple, and you start to follow the process. And by the way, as you do this, of course, what you're gearing up for is automation ultimately, because once you know this and you can do it, as a person doing it, well, then that is how you're then going to be able to say, well, then these are the things that are very process oriented that we could actually get a system to do for us as well. And we've already worked out the process, so it's going to be reasonably straightforward to do it. So I would say that's the third domain that that's going to help us with productive productivity, and efficiency is the domain of customer success best practice.
And I would just add, Rick, to that is that I believe that throughout all that, there needs to be some sort of a theme about research that continually happens. Meaning, how else do you keep your model relevant and alive and vital if it's not still looking outside to learn?
Great.
What should be happening with our model to make it continually improve? So
right.
Ideally, that means you're always looking at customers, you're talking to customers.
So if we look at something like ITIL, which has its framework for in-service management, so it's got its steps inside, and then around the outside is CSI, continual service improvement. And I absolutely agree with you, 100%.
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess we'd better find where we are. Slides. Here we go. Move to our fifth and final topic for today, which is turning customer success from a team into a culture. So this is quite interesting, because I think this really does move into this concept of a modern customer success service as opposed to customer success organization, which perhaps is slightly different. So turning customer success from a team into a culture. Your thoughts, Peter?
Well, I think I would say, just from an industry point of view, I think the customer success industry, which is the community of customer success managers and leaders and all that are happy, it's really, wonderful. I mean, people can get a lot of warmth and interaction on LinkedIn and Twitter and everything. It's because it's a very vibrant community, and I think that's wonderful. So there feels like there's a culture external to all the companies. Now, the question really is about more, how do you change it into, I think what we're talking about is inside the company. How do you develop this culture of customer success versus just an organization? And I think it's about having the right kind of leadership in place that can encourage and stimulate the right sort of behaviors, the right sort of communications, the right sort of ideas for reinforcing the service mentality that, where we have to always have the customer in mind. Even though we're part of the vendor environment and we are paid by the vendor, and of course our first commitment is to fulfilling our roles, you still have to have the customer front of mind, because that's the purpose of the job, actually, is to serve the customer. And
so every single role in an organization could be started with the sentence, to better serve our customers by. And then that could be sweeping the floor, making sandwiches, doing strategic management decision-making, manufacturing. It doesn't matter, right? All of it should be making things better for our customer by whatever our role happens to be. I like that concept a lot. I think that's really powerful.
I totally agree. I mean, the words matter, the communication matters, and eventually, if enough people kind of get excited about that, I think you can actually, create a really.
And I'm serious about when I think about when I've worked for larger organizations, I worked for a long time with Cisco. I was for Cisco with Cisco. Don't know how to say it. I was never an employee, but I had a badge and could get in and spent a lot of time in Cisco's offices. And you look at they were very good at this. They were a company like Apple is another good example of people who were passionate about who they worked for and why, and they had a vision in mind. And you would speak to somebody, for example, at the salad bar who was going to make you your sandwich, right? And you could come away from a brief conversation and an exchange of your money for their sandwich that they made for you, feeling good about your afternoon because they had been pleasant and conversed with you and had a little chat about the weather or whatever it was. And part of their role actually does make things better for the customer because they are part of making everybody more productive and efficient in their day through those simple little interactions. And I know it's a silly little example, but I really mean it, guys. I mean, it's the philosophy behind this that is so important, and the reason why Cisco, become a $20 billion turnover company is because they get these things right. As I'm sure it's the case to Oracle, as well.
And I would say, Rick, the clinical way of looking at that would be that customer success mentality, and so it shouldn't just be restricted to customer success, but the mentality
absolutely
becomes your brand in a way.
Yes.
and that sandwich maker was personifying the brand in a way, right?
Yes.
They were reinforcing for you this experience that was pleasant. And
Yes.
I think that's a good, and it's amazing really that a company as massive as Cisco was able to kind of make it work.
Yeah, and obviously you're going to meet people in any organization, right? So I'm generalizing, but certainly that's how I found it. And I would say also then that the one area of this that we need to, I believe we the world need to adjust our thinking about is sales, because at the moment it seems to me that people think that sales are who wins sales, and I don't think that sales are who wins sales. I think we all, from the sandwich maker to the product developers to everybody, we all combine to win the sale, and the salesperson has a very important part to play, but so does everybody else. And it is only through everybody doing their part well and being customer outcomes focused, customer outcomes first, that is how we win the business. Yeah. We set up the salesperson so well that they can't possibly go wrong, ideally. Okay, ideally.
Well, some people actually are predicting that in the future, a lot of the sales will be not just non-events, but they'll be more automated, actually, because it'll be set up.
So the sale, ultimately, the sale's a transaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
So there are some, so there are some important aspects of account management. Like there's a storytelling part. And there's a negotiating part, okay, and there's a leadership and communication part. But actually, when it comes down to it, there is no such thing as selling, or everything's a sale. I mean, one or the other. You've got to decide which one you want to believe in. But I mean, if you're saying to your son or daughter, well, if I read you one more story, you've got to promise that you're going to go to sleep afterwards. You just negotiated a deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't need to go to legal. Well, actually, probably does, but you know what I mean. So look, we've got a few minutes left. Got about 8 minutes left. Should we? Is there anything you wanted to say about that before we move on, or should we go to questions? Yeah. Okay, so let's so turning customer success from a team into a culture involving everybody, not just the customer success organization. That doesn't mean that the customer success organization disappears. It's still critical. They have a specific role to do, but everybody is customer success oriented and understands the philosophy, and this leads the vision and mission of our company, which is effectively we exist to make our customers successful.
Yeah,
and by virtue of that, we end up selling more rather than we exist to sell as much as possible.
Yeah.
All right, good. So, well, we've come on a little journey. As I say, today's been a bit of a, it's been quite an overview one, and we're going to get much more into the nitty gritty and the detail as we move forwards. But nevertheless, it would be interesting just to see if we do have anyone who has any questions. So your opportunity, guys, if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to do so. And I do see a couple here that are sent. So Angelique has asked, what is the difference between a business case and a use case? So you mentioned the expression use case earlier, Peter. So I don't know if you want to sort of cover.
Yeah, so I would say, we'll try and do it quickly. A use case is just a description of the way a product can be used to accomplish something in the customer's environment. So they buy a product, there might be a number of reasons why they buy it, but they, in their mind, and maybe even in practice, they've figured out what needs to happen to solve a business challenge. And to get there with the product and the way it works to solve it is the use case, right? Now, a business case is something entirely different. It's actually just an argument that's made with numbers.
So that's a specific proposal. It's like a business case is more like a business proposal, isn't it, really? Right. So like the business proposal tends to be from a supplier to a customer, whereas a business case is like an internal business proposal where customer success says, for example, as they should be, here's the business case for investing in customer success training.
That's right.
For example.
That's right.
Okay. Whereas the use case is saying, well, if we did invest in customer success training, this is the results that we would get.
This is what will happen.
Sort of, as you say, using a generic example of why to use a product. Okay, cool. And anyone else got any questions they want to ask, please feel free to do so. Just put them into the chat window You can either send to everybody or send privately, whichever you want. Orlando's asking, how do you measure team productivity or team efficiency? So we talked about team productivity and team efficiency earlier. We didn't really talk about measurement. I will say this is that we do have one of our modules coming up, one of our months specifically on measurement. So I'm sure that we will touch
we'll go into
that there, but it's a great question. Any thoughts on sort of productivity and efficiency?
Well, the crude instruments are, you have to understand what your organization costs to run. So you have, compensation, the total packages for everybody. And then you need to figure out how much time it takes to do something. So this time and compensation kind of are the variables. And then you can kind of figure out how many customers. Well, then you also have numbers around your number of accounts. And so there's some raw data you can use to then start calculating kind of a rough number around productivity. So if you've got 100 customers and you've got 10 CSMs and they cost X dollars, you can start making a calculation, right? And then you start wondering, okay, well, if I increase the ratio, what does that do for the productivity number? So basic stuff like that. But I think this is a good conversation that we should explore. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, definitely. It is a good question. And we do have measurement in one of our upcoming sessions. So I would add to that. So I agree entirely with what Peter said. And I would just add to that that ideally you want to create a benchmark as soon as possible, because the benchmark is almost ideally is like, without customer success, what do we get? And so that then as you add customer success into the mix, what you're looking at then is, well, if the results were A without customer success and the results were B with customer success, then that tells us what customer success is doing. Correct. So I would say that. But then, of course, that's very difficult to do because you might need to, it's too late. Well, then that's fine. So you work on what you've got and you move forwards and look at how you differ as you move forwards, and you add an intervention. So let's say, for example, let's have the framework. Let's put a framework in place. And we'll train people on the framework. But what we'll do first of all is we will benchmark what they do and how much of it they do and what the results of doing it are now beforehand. And then afterwards we can measure and we can see are there any differences. So it's really, generally speaking, to measure productivity or efficiency, we need a before and an after, I would say, is really the kind of the key here. So final question. I'm going to answer you, Catherine, in chat. I'm going to give Peter a question to answer as well whilst I'm doing that. And if anyone has any other final questions, feel free to do so. But Zara is messaging, is low touch or automated CS services recommended for all companies?
Well, I think we touched a little bit on that. And I think a lot of people, the conventional way of thinking of it is that it's not for all companies, but I believe there's an opportunity for all companies to do a kind of an element of low touch, even for their high touch. So we mentioned that earlier, Rick, where you might have a lot of giving some customers a lot of attention, human to human, and that's what you need to do. But there are probably opportunities there, even in those environments, where a low touch kind of approach would be very beneficial for the customer, and also for you because of the productivity question. But yeah, absolutely. I think all companies, and someone just wrote a blog post this morning I saw on LinkedIn, basically saying that all customers should have some sort of a tech touch approach, and I subscribe to that too.
Yeah, I think I do as well. I would agree. People want self-service. We're used to it now, right? Mm-hmm. We're very used to it, and as you said, people's. As we both said, intelligence has grown and knowledge has grown. We know enough to be able to do it ourselves. And actually, if I want to get on and do it at 2 a.m, I don't have to wait till tomorrow when you're free. I mean, if I can use your tool to do it now. Sometimes automation actually is better. Yeah.
If I have to contact my telco for anything, I just prefer chat.
That's absolutely. Right. Oh, can you imagine going into the bank? Oh, you have to come into the bank for that, sir.
No.
Oh no! Please don't make me have to come into the bank.
Doesn't work for
Please don't do that. I never go into city centres anymore. Right? Never, ever, ever, ever. I don't want to ever have to go into a bank.
No.
Yeah, I'd far rather be able to do it self-service online. Absolutely right. Absolutely right. Okay, good. So, well, I think we're there. So thank you all very, very, very much for participating. If you go to this link here and sign up at free membership at practicalcsm.com. So practicalcsm.com, and then just type that in and you'll see the free membership option. And if you sign up there, then we can keep you informed and provide you with a way to register for the next event automatically. Obviously, we'll advertise it the same as we did this one on LinkedIn, etc. anyway. But the next event will be coming up. I think it's the 24th from memory of February.
Yep.
So just so you're aware of that, and so we'll be continuing on the series there. And just thank you, Peter. I've really enjoyed it, as I always do. Always love talking to you.
Me too.
And thank you, everybody else. So any final thoughts from yourself, Peter? Anything you want to?
No, I just want to thank the audience. I really appreciate it, and thanks for your questions. And hopefully you'll come back and tell all your friends and family to join.
Yeah. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you all, and goodbye for now. See you next month for round 2.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.